My dogman friend brought his puppy to meet me. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I've got a story about 3 dogmen that I encountered, and one that I became friends with. In my mind, at least. I felt a genuine bond with him, and it lasted for over a decade, our friendship, but it didn't start off all warm and fuzzy. In fact, our experiences with the dog-headed people started off as absolutely terrifying. We almost gave up and moved out. That's how scared we were of the creatures. When I say we, I mean me and my wife Sandy. When we first moved into that property in northern Michigan that our son is raising his family on now, Sandy and I were just starting out in life. She was expecting Tommy at the time, and we needed a place that was a little bigger than where we had been living. Both of us worked out of home, even back then, so we decided to ditch the city long before it became the hipster trend. These days we live about 20 miles from the house, in an area that's a bit more populated. Because my wife is undergoing medical treatments in a medical center, it's a long story. But our son and his family have trap cams set up around the old property, and they keep an eye out looking for any new generation of dogmen that might wander through the area. So far, all of our sightings and events occurred during the period I'm about to tell you about, but I really do hope that someday the family might pass through again in their annual migration. But back then, we certainly did not welcome the dogman. I guess it's over 40 years ago now, which is amazing, because it feels like this all happened just last weekend. When we bought the place, we got it at a song, and we never wondered why. It was just like the start of 872 different horror movies, but we didn't spot that pattern. Like, why was the place so cheap? Just because God provides for young families? That was how we looked at it, that God was smiling down on us. We couldn't figure out what anyone would find imperfect about our little piece of paradise. So, one night in our new house, Sandra woke me up from a sound sleep and started saying words that didn't mean anything to me. I remember being annoyed at her until I gazed past her, and I saw what I took as a werewolf from a Hollywood movie, standing on our roof ledge outside our second-story bedroom window, and staring in at us. I screamed like I was acting in a Nicolas Cage movie, and I leaped out of bed. The creature jumped off the ledge and ran away, but I still screamed for Sandy to get in the closet and close the door for protection. She refused and told me to calm down, but I was fired up. I was a guy in his early 20s protecting his pregnant wife, and I ordered her into the closet while I checked out the window. She continued to ignore me as I threw on my sneakers and ran downstairs with my baseball bat. I ran around the backyard bellowing about how this was my land now, and any big hairy werewolves that used to live there now had to move out. Absolutely nothing responded. The beast had probably run a quarter mile away by then. I really had my adrenaline pumping though, so I just kept screaming. I was incredibly scared of what I had seen, but I wanted it to be scared of me instead. So what exactly had I seen out there? Well, it was big. It was bigger than I was. It stood up like a man or a Bigfoot monster, but it was neither. It was like a dog, but it was upright, in that way that a bear can get. It was more fast-moving and flexible than a bear, though, and this is why I went with the werewolf name at first. It wasn't wearing clothing, though. This was an animal that looked like a werewolf. It also had nipples on its belly, so I think I was seeing a female. What a female animal would be doing up on my roof staring in my window at night, I am not sure. Maybe she lost something. To me it seems more like the behavior of a young male, but this was a female. I saw it briefly, but I saw enough to be certain. I wouldn't know the name of that species, but I would know that I saw a female version of that species. This was the early 1980s, and I do think they had game trail cameras of one sort or another back then. But we weren't game trail people, so we didn't think of that. We were really city folk and we had no idea what we were dealing with. There was one particular librarian back then who helped us get a bit of perspective on what was going on. My wife Sandy just flat out told the woman what we had seen on our roof looking in at us, and that librarian's eyes got wide. We were lucky that she was an open-minded lady, and she showed a few old articles to my wife on microfilm or microfiche or something. It seemed that there was a pre-existing legend describing exactly what we saw, and the name of that legend was the Dogman. So we had gotten a visit from a mother dogman. Why had it been looking in? Did it have something to do with my wife being pregnant? I know that seems like a reach, but there was, and still is, some aspect of that sighting that seems strange, even by the already strange standards of cryptid sightings. The fact that it was noticeably a female, but she was alone and not with her pack or tribe, seems to me to make this an extremely out of the ordinary occurrence. Now, I did not know about this next part until afterward, but my wife Sandra had been putting out meat, hanging from trees. She was hoping to draw the female dogman back that she had awakened me to get me upset over. She never asked my opinion about doing this, and she never warned me that she was going to do it either. I know that you can't share everything with your mate, but it felt out of the ordinary for her to be so quiet about doing such a thing. Maybe she thought I'd grab my baseball bat and throw another screaming fit in the backyard. And maybe I would have actually done that too. At any rate, she was hanging cold cuts or something out there. I'm not sure exactly what. But she was hanging it up in trees, thinking that only tall animals could eat it then. Birds and squirrels could get at it too, but my wife thinks with her mythic imagination. Oh, I'll put the meat up high so only the dogman will eat it then. She can be very illogical, but she is so charming that the universe itself bends its own rules to please her and to stay on her good side. In this case, she hung baloney out to dry, and then one night, I looked out the window, and I saw that dogman lady in our backyard. This time she was being circled by a tiny little pup. It was very excited and barked like a terrier or something. The mother ignored it. It kept walking straight across my yard, almost like she was in a somnambulistic trance. The dogman pup circled her, prancing on 4 legs, 2 legs, 3 legs, dancing like a playful moon, orbiting her as she crossed the lawn as though it were the heavens. This time it was me waking my wife up to tell her of what I'd seen outside, and I was quite surprised when she wasn't. At all. Surprised, I mean. In fact, I was the stunned one when she lit up brightly and acted as though she had been planning all along to get that lady dogman to come back. Guiltily, she admitted that this was exactly what she had been doing. We bickered about it, but we were both too busy to let the bickering last much into the next day. I had my business to keep afloat, and she had both that and her pregnancy to cope with. We didn't see the creatures again until after she gave birth to our son Tommy, or Thomas, as he prefers to be called now that he's a father of his own. The next memory I have of the dogman was the puppy, now more of a teenager, dancing around the edge of the yard and barking, or yapping, at my toddler son as I watched from the kitchen, feeling helplessly far away. My wife was right there, but she was sitting and doing nothing, allowing the young dogman and our helpless child to stare each other down. Tommy did not even know how to speak yet. He was still that young. And yet for some reason, Sandy was allowing the two of them to stare unimpeded at each other. My eyes scanned the woodline for the mother, but I didn't see it anywhere. I knew that if I went out there blustering and making noises, I might excite both mother bears, the dogman one and the human one. So I did walk out back, but I did it as quietly as I could. Then I nearly tiptoed past my wife and up to our child. I grabbed Tommy from behind and lifted him up so that I could carry him back into the house. My wife protested, saying that the two were getting to know each other. The dogman was getting to know our kid. He was getting familiar with our toddler. Now, why was that something I should want to have happen? I remember questioning Sandy's mothering instinct, and we had a much larger fight that time. The thing is, we never saw that mother dogman again. The boy seemed to be on his own as far as we could tell, at least when he came by to visit us. He was so friendly and playful that eventually we did allow him to play games with our growing son. I don't mean this happened in a week. I mean that when our son was 5 or 6, he would sometimes play with the dog and pet him a little. When he was 7 or 10, they would play catch and frisbee. This dogman grew a bit faster than our son, but he didn't grow as fast as a normal dog might. His childhood lasted for years, whereas a normal dog's might last for months. The thing is, he lived on his own in the wild at an early age, just the same as any other kind of wild dog might. Neither Sandy nor I have ever read about dogman having lifespans as humanoid as this, so maybe this creature we lived near was different from the norm. Maybe he developed more slowly than what would normally be the rule. But we observed a creature that was really a lot like humans, and yet was thoroughly and 100% a really fun and pleasant canine puppy. We used to call him our second son, and we were only half joking. He lived in the woods, and yet still managed to eat us out of house and home. I really did grow to love him, and I felt a bit sad each time he'd run back into the woods after he'd gotten his fill of supermarket dog food and fun times playing with his human friends. I wish he could come sleep in our house, but I knew he was growing up to be a monster in quite literal terms, and I knew that you can't just invite a monster into your home, not even a nice one, as lovable as that dogman pup that we had growing up in the woods just behind our home. We kinda had different names for him over the years, but they were always sort of descriptive of his mysterious nature. Like we called him the Yeti for a while, and we called him Gary Busey, because Gary Busey was in a werewolf movie back then. We didn't see the film till much later, and we were disappointed to learn that Gary was not actually the werewolf in the film. This was sad for us to learn, since we had also called the creature Buddy and Buddy Holly, just because Gary Busey once played Buddy Holly. Meanwhile, I don't think Gary Busey ever played a werewolf, and that dogman didn't look anything like Gary Busey, so it's weird the way things get started sometimes. One thing that I've read about dogman pups doing that we experienced was that they do sometimes share their kills with you if they respect you. Usually that's more of a feline thing to do than canine, but our dogman friend did this for us. We did not enjoy seeing disgusting dead things, or parts of them, outside our front or back doors randomly in the morning, but we tried to act like we saw it as an honor in case the dogman was watching. Fortunately, Sandy took it as her job to clean up these messes, since she was the one who had attracted the beastman to habituating near us. We took care to bring the nastiness inside before throwing it in garbage bags, and then sneaking it out the back to the garbage, which we kept in bear-proof cans that the dogman didn't know how to get into. Our son Tom is one of the few rare individuals who can claim to have been rescued by the dogman, but he was passed out at the time, so he wouldn't remember any of that. For a while, Tommy and his friends went through a period where they were experimenting with things that they didn't want their parents to know about. Tommy became secretive and distant, and I remember that we were worried. One night the dogman Gary woke us both up, tapping on our window. When I got up, he jumped downstairs and ran circles in a frantic way. I put on my shoes and met him in the yard, where he took off running. I turned around and went back inside, thinking that dog was just crazy, when my wife handed me a flashlight and said, "He wants you to follow him." Sure enough, The dogman ran back to me when I didn't follow him. I turned the flashlight on, and then he led me into the night. Eventually, he showed me my son lying unconscious under a tree, and at first I thought he had lost his life. He was only wasted and passed out, and I was so angry at him. He wasn't dressed warm enough for that night, and he was going to get himself very sick, but the dogman saved him all that. The dogman might have saved his life that night, as I thought my kid was asleep in his bed. I wouldn't have realized till the middle of the next day that he was even missing, probably, since he slept late on weekends. I carried the kid home, which gave me a back issue that I still have today. He was too old to be carried around anymore, and it was the dogman that clued us in that we needed to teach our son how to stand on his own two legs as a man. Rather than punish him in any ordinary sense, I challenged him to a drinking competition instead. Let him try to drink like his father, if that's what he wants to do. I'd like to say I drank the brat under the table, but it was really more of a tie. The point was, when we shared the toilet to throw up into later, my son and I were bonded deeply for life. He was a man now, and that couldn't have happened without the dogman making me go get him out of the cold, dark night. Our family owes a lot to that dogman. He was the best friend our clan ever had. This was why, when Tommy was in high school, it bothered us so much that the dogman ceased coming around. I mean, I suppose it was just as well. Tom had become very social, and he wouldn't exactly be able to invite his friends over if there were a wild predator hanging around, eating all our cold cuts and leaving half a dead raccoon on the doorstep each morning. But even Tom began to miss the beast as he got ready to head off for college. I guess we wanted to know if the little guy was okay. We worried that he didn't make it, since life in the woods can get quite harsh, obviously. Sandy told Tommy to think good thoughts of our little Yeti. Tell him that we love him, and let him know that you're moving away to college. Tom took her advice to heart and did what she asked him to do every night before bedtime. Then when it came time for us to have our one last backyard cookout before our son left for the university, the three of us stopped laughing and chattering with each other when we heard the leaves moving and parting behind us. There, walking into our yard, was a beast man as tall as a mountain. He was over 7 feet tall, and his shoulders were so broad that it looked like he had NFL shoulder pads on. He wasn't a man, though. His body was covered in thick fur instead of clothing. His head was canine, with tall ears, and a face that progressively lightened in color, approaching its pitch black nose tip. This was our dogman pup. This was Gary. Or else it was another of his clan, because the colorings and markings were so similar. Was this beast there to interrupt our barbecue and slaughter all of us? What was his intention in standing there staring at us? The moment remained absolutely silent except for the wind. Not a single cricket chirped, nor did any bird. The entire world held its breath. This little wobbly walking puppy attempted to trot out from behind his dad on his 2 hind legs. He got a foot or two out in front before pratfalling on his own dog's snout and causing the 3 of us to burst out laughing. The big one was our friend. The little clumsy one was his son. Well, we tossed table scraps at them and they sampled some of our dinner before our old friend picked his yappy brat up and tossed him onto one of his massive shoulders way up in the sky. We all said goodbye with a stare, and I admit I was a bit emotional when the 2 of them left. It felt very final, to be sure. My wife and son both felt certain that he only came back with his son that one time, in response to Gary's wish for him to do so. You can't talk them out of this belief, although I don't subscribe to that kind of thinking. I figure we just got lucky. He was there and we were there, and we got to say a final goodbye If our cookout was the night before or after, it probably just wouldn't have happened. Sandy and Tom both scoff at that and say I'm nuts. Why else would the two of those creatures have made the trek they did back to see us, except to respond to Tom's mentally projected request? But one thing we kind of all do agree about is that we probably won't see the Dogman around that property again. Or if one is sighted, it probably would not be from that friendly clan that we used to interact with. They could be in an entirely different state or even a different country by now, considering how close that property is to Canada. So there's a real sad edge to thinking back on this story, knowing that it will always remain nostalgia and in the past. I wish I could see my old friend and his family again, but they're wild creatures meant to live free. We have no clear photos of any of them which survive, so I will have to content myself with the joyful memories I have of the time that my dogman friend brought his puppy to meet me. You want an executive producer who can pass the test, then get the best, and that's CS. Please join me in thanking tonight's executive and supervising producer for making this and many of our other episodes possible. CS is a person we can't thank enough. I know that's a thing they say on stage at the fake award shows, but in this case, I just mean it literally. There isn't any amount of thanks or tribute that would pay CS back fairly for all that she's done to keep this channel afloat through one weird time after another. This is a YouTube saint in my opinion, and we should erect a statue to her, except nobody knows what her image is, so we can't do that. If any of you are still listening this far, maybe you can leave a nice comment to CS in that letters section, or whatever it is you whippersnapper kids call that mumbo jumbo under the video. All kidding aside, we truly are grateful to CS, and we hope you realize how important she's been to keeping us online. And now, a little black furry dog is gonna yap at you. Henry? Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.